All right, let's talk about Hartnup's disease. It's one of those classic examples in biochemistry where one tiny little mistake, a single broken transporter, can cause a whole cascade of problems throughout the body. It's fascinating, so let's jump right in. So let's start with a big question. What if your body just couldn't absorb one of the most important amino acids out there? Tryptophan. I mean, you know tryptophan. We need it for everything, not just building proteins. It's the starting point for serotonin, for niacin. So what happens when the front door for this amino acid is just, well, broken? That's exactly what we're talking about with Hartnup's disease. Okay, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the core transport problem. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the defective transporter itself. After that, we'll connect the dots from tryptophan all the way to a condition called pellagra. Then we'll cover what this looks like in a patient and how we manage it. And of course, we'll wrap up with the essentials to make sure this all sticks for your exams. All right, section 1. Let's dive into the core issue, the tryptophan transport problem. The key thing to get right away is that Hartnups isn't about the body not knowing what to do with tryptophan. The problem is just getting it through the door. It's all about transport. So here's the official definition. It's a hereditary disorder, meaning it's genetic, and it's all about messed up transport of neutral amino acids, especially our main character, tryptophan. This isn't happening just in one place either. The breakdown is in two critical spots: the intestine, where you're supposed to absorb it from your food, and the renal tubules in your kidneys, where you're supposed to pull it back from your urine. So it's a double whammy. Okay, section 2, the defective transporter. Now we're going to get into the why. What exactly is broken here on a molecular level? So this is a genetic issue. Specifically, it's an autosomal recessive disorder. You probably remember this from genetics, but that means you need to get a faulty copy of the gene from both mom and dad to actually have the disease. The gene in question here is called SLC6A19, and it's basically the instruction manual for building that neutral amino acid transporter. Let's walk through this step by step. Normally, you've got these awesome transporters in your gut and kidneys that just efficiently grab onto tryptophan and other neutral amino acids. Simple. But in Hartnups, that transporter is defective. I love the analogy of a broken gate. It's stuck. So, what's the result? Tryptophan from your diet can't get in properly. And even worse, what's already in your system gets spilled out into the urine instead of being reabsorbed. You're losing it from both ends. Okay, section 3, from tryptophan to pellagra. So what? The body's losing some tryptophan. What's the big deal? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. We're about to connect this one molecular defect to the full-blown clinical symptoms, which, believe it or not, look just like another disease you might have heard of, pellagra. Now, you might think of tryptophan as just one of the 20 amino acids for making proteins, but oh man, it is so much more than that. It's a superstar. Your body uses it to make serotonin, the feel-good neurotransmitter. It makes melatonin to help you sleep. But for Hartnup's disease, the most critical role, the one we really need to focus on, is that it's the precursor for niacin. That's vitamin B3. Okay, if you're taking notes, put a big star next to this. This is the central pathway you have to understand for this disease. Tryptophan gets converted into niacin, or B3. And why do we care so much about niacin? Because it's essential to make NAD+ and NADP+. And as you know, those two coenzymes are, well, they're everything. They are absolutely critical for energy metabolism in pretty much every cell in your body. So let's put this side by side. In a healthy person, it's a smooth chain of events. You absorb tryptophan, you make enough niacin, and you have plenty of NAD+ and NADP+ to power your cells. Easy. But in Hartnup's disease, that chain is broken right at the start. You lose tryptophan in the gut and urine, which leads to a niacin deficiency. And that deficiency means you can't make enough NAD+ and NADP+. And that is the biochemical reason for all the symptoms we're about to see. All right, section 4, clinical picture and management. We've got the biochemistry down, so now let's switch gears and look at what this actually means for a patient. What do they feel? What do we see? And how do we help them? This is a really key clinical point. Because the downstream problem is a niacin deficiency, the symptoms of Hartnup's disease are basically a mirror image of pellagra. Pellagra is what you get when you don't eat enough niacin. From the body's perspective, not being able to make niacin from tryptophan looks exactly the same as not eating enough niacin. The end result is the same. And when we talk about pellagra, we always talk about the classic 3 Ds. You've got to know these. First is dermatitis. This is a very specific kind of skin rash. It's photosensitive, meaning it shows up on parts of the body exposed to the sun. Second is diarrhea. And third is dementia. Now, dementia here doesn't necessarily mean Alzheimer's. It's a broader term for neurological symptoms, like ataxia, which is trouble with coordination, and even things like emotional instability.
So, how do we confirm the diagnosis? Well, the biggest clue is in the patient's urine. Think about it. If tryptophan isn't getting absorbed in the small intestine, where does it go? It keeps on traveling down to the large intestine, where it meets a ton of gut bacteria. Those bacteria have a field day with it and metabolize it into other things, like indole compounds. These compounds then get absorbed into the bloodstream and, you guessed it, excreted in the urine. Finding a lot of these tryptophan metabolites in the urine is a dead giveaway.
The management strategy is actually really logical and elegant because it targets each part of the problem. You see neutral amino acids in the urine? Well, let's give the patient a high-protein diet to try and flood the system and maximize whatever absorption they have left. You've got pellagra-like symptoms? Easy. We just give them nicotinamide. That's the active form of vitamin B3, directly. We just bypass that broken tryptophan pathway completely. For the photosensitive skin, we advise them to stay out of the sun and use sunscreen. And of course, to help the kidneys deal with everything, staying well hydrated is key.
Okay, we're in the home stretch. Section 5, the essentials for revision. Let's boil this all down to the absolute must-know, high-yield facts for your exams. And to help you lock all of this in, we've got a great mnemonic. The best part is, you already know it. It's the name of the disease itself. Hartnup.
Let's break it down. H is for hereditary. It's genetic. A is for the amino acid transport defect. That's the core problem. R is for reduced tryptophan. T is for the 3Ds of pellagra. N is for nicotinamide deficiency, which is what causes those 3Ds. U is for that key diagnostic sign, urine amino aciduria. And finally, P is for protein helps, a big part of the treatment. Hartnup. Simple as that.
So to wrap this all up, let's end with a final gut check question. What is the one vitamin deficiency that this entire disease process boils down to? The answer is niacin, vitamin B3. If you can remember that connection, from the broken transporter to the lost tryptophan to the lack of niacin, you've completely understood Hartnup's disease. It's a perfect example of how biochemistry connects directly to the patient in front of you. Thanks for joining me.